Now, let's take a look at the effect of COVID-19 on jobs in Nigeria as the government commenced the second phase of the easing of the lockdown. There is the likelihood of many workers losing their jobs and, of course, no doubt, the need to create more avenues for employment. One of such avenues is to consolidate on the gains of the implementation of the Local Content Act in the sector of the oil and gas sector on other sectors of the economy. Now, to do this, we are joined to talk to us about what the Nigerian government is doing to ensure that people do not lose their jobs in the country in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic is the chairman of the House of Representatives Committee of Nigerian Content Development and Monitoring, Honorable Legor Idagbo. He joins us via Skype from Abuja. Good morning, Honorable, and good to have you join us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me join you. Good morning. Good morning, everybody.
Thank you. Now, when we talk about COVID-19 and its impact on the economy, what comes to mind readily is the number of jobs that will be lost in the process. I do know that there was a move by the House of Representatives to ensure that jobs are secure when it proposed a bill for an act to provide for tax relief and suspension of import duty on selected medical items, and it was called the Emergency Economic Stimulus Bill 2020. As at the last time I checked, that bill has not been signed into law. Can you tell us, give us an update or the status of that particular bill?
Well, thank you very much. Just like you said, when you talk of COVID-19, there is always the issue of jobs being lost, because so many people would need to work digitally, and for people to come to work on a daily basis may not be the case. So some establishments are bound to lay off some staff and all that. So for me, I would want to talk on the Nigerian Content Bill.
We would come to that, Honourable, just very quick, because very briefly, because we do understand the essentials of that particular bill, but we need you to give us an overview of the mindset of the House of Representatives, because we do know that there is a stimulus package plan by the executive, but then there is an emergency economic stimulus bill to activate some of these plans by the, which of course has been proposed by the House of Representatives. So just give us an overview of the mindset of the House of Representatives as far as the impact of COVID-19 is affecting the economy and jobs.
Well, thank you very much. The House of Representatives is very concerned with what's happening in the country today. If you would recall, the House has tried severally to pass certain bills that will rejig the Nigerian economy amidst this COVID-19 pandemic. And one of such bills is what you talked about. The House will support the executive because nobody anticipated this kind of pandemic where jobs will be threatened, where we would have to look in-country, where we will have to look inside to be self-sufficient and stop depending on globalization and other forces. Mm-hmm. So we're waiting and we're ready to do everything within our powers as a house to ensure that we create an opportunity out of this COVID-19 pandemic for our economy to thrive and for us to begin to look inwards, for us to be self-sufficient and for us to be self-dependent. That's what the House of Representatives is looking forward to achieving.
Well, I guess that's what led to this particular bill, which is titled the Nigerian Local Content Development and Enforcement Bill 2020, which of course is expected to consolidate on the gains made in implementing the local content in the oil and gas industry. Talking about the Local Content Act, what are these gains, considering the fact that the sector, that is the oil and gas sector, is replete with a lot of controversies?
Well, thank you very much. When you say the oil and gas sector is replete with a lot of controversies, it's also good to look at what used to obtain in the sector prior to today. Before the coming into or before the signing into law of the NOGID Act, which happened in 2010, you would recall that over 2 million jobs in the oil and gas sector were sourced outside Nigeria. You would also recall that we had a capital flight of over 315 billion US dollars. And today, as I speak to you, because of the passage into law of the NOGID Act, you find that 80% of what was outsourced out country is now being done in country in Nigeria. You find that about 85% of those jobs that were outsourced out country are now being handled by Nigerians. I can give you an example of Shell.
Okay.
Before that, Shell had over 90% of its staff as expatriates. Today, you have about 85% of Shell staff as indigenous Nigerians. NLNG, for instance, also has over 90% of its staff as Nigerians. So there's been a lot of gain in the oil and gas sector. So we're saying that having recorded those gains, owing it to the NOGID Act that was passed into law in 2010, we want to replicate those gains in every other sector of the Nigerian economy. It's not yet uhuru in the oil and gas sector. We're still working. In fact, we've had to amend the act to ensure that we get it perfectly right in the oil and gas sector. And then trying to see how we can expand those gains to every other sector of the economy.
You know, it's easy to say, yes, we have this particular bill that intends to create local content participation and all of that. But there are concerns that despite the local content law in the oil and gas sector, you did mention earlier that, yes, it is not yet uhuru, but enforcing the expatriate quota remains a major hurdle. Now, if this is the case in the oil and gas sector, how do you think that Nigerians, Nigeria can actually get it right? If we're not able to get it right in the oil and gas sector, what is the possibility that Nigeria will get it right in other sectors of the economy?
Well, just like I said earlier, I think we've attempted to get it right in the oil and gas sector. Because the numbers I gave you earlier, like when I talked about Shell, where you have about 80% of their staff being expatriates, and today you have about 80 to 90% of their staff being Nigerian. That is as a result of the gains of this NOGID Act. So I think we've attempted to get it right in the oil and gas sector. But in the new bill that we propose for every other sector, we are even further tightening the gaps. We're trying to ensure that before you get an expatriate into Nigeria to do a job, you must be sure that there is no Nigerian that is qualified to do that same job. You must advertise for that job in 3 national dailies. You must give time for Nigerians to come out and say, well, they are not qualified. And even if that is the case and you get to employ that expatriate, you must have him deputized by a Nigerian, and you must ensure that there's a policy for transfer of technology to that Nigeria. So the expatriate coming into Nigeria is not coming to work indefinitely. He's coming to work for a period of time and to ensure that that technology is transferred to a Nigerian who will deputize him. So that after some time, you do not even need to renew that expatriate quota. All these are things that we put in place in this, our new bill, to ensure that moving forward, we can get it right in terms of expatriate quota and Nigerian employed in every sector.
Now, let's be very specific on some of these sectors captured in the bill. Which sectors of the economy does the bill consider key for this piece of legislation to boost local expertise?
Well, the bill captures the construction sector, agricultural sector, the health sector, manufacturing, ICT, and telecommunications. These are critical sectors in the Nigerian economy. For the construction sector, as big as Shell is, you would be surprised that they do not have a staff strength of more than 4,000 people. But look at Julius Berger, for instance, that is in construction. As I speak to you, Julius Berger is employing about 75,000 people. So these jobs, we want that sector. Construction, agriculture, health, and the rest of them. I can give you a specific example. For instance, now you see our bakeries are being taken over by the Chinese. The Chinese come in with their people, you know, they get the license and they go into baking. And their people are gainfully employed. Our quarries are being taken over by the Chinese. You know, so we need to take charge of our economy. We need to take over our quarries. We need to take over every sector. And then with the local content law, we can train our people where their capacity gap and ensure that indeed they are gainfully employed.
Now, there's a Presidential Executive Order 003 and 005 on local content. Are you insinuating that unless there's an enabling legislation to encourage the employment of local skills, that this Presidential Executive Order may just be in limbo?
Well, let me use this opportunity to commend our President, His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari, for signing the Executive Order 003 and the Executive Order 005. You know, those executive orders have helped to a large extent.
Okay.
But where the powers of the executive order stops, that's where our legislation will continue.
Simplify. Can you break that down for us?
I'm going to do that.
Go ahead,
the executive orders have their limitations. First of all, the executive orders are limited to procurement in the public sector, you know, and then our bill expands beyond procurement and talks about even licenses of privately owned companies. For instance, I give you an example of Dangote Refinery is privately owned. They are putting in about 15 billion US dollars into the economy of Nigeria, building that refinery. And there is no Nigerian content plan for that refinery because there is no law that empowers them to do so. Mambila Power Plant is committing about 6 billion US dollars. No Nigerian content plan because there is no law that empowers them to do so. By the time our bill is signed into law, it will encompass every private sector operator that seeks to do business in Nigeria to ensure that you first of all submit a Nigerian content plan that tells Nigerians how many jobs opportunities will be available, how many Nigerians will be employed, how many subcontracts will be available, how many Nigerians will get those subcontracts. So that is what our law seeks to achieve. And again, executive orders are not sacrosanct. If they are not backed up by the Constitution or by an enabling legislation, they can be challenged in court and thrown out. Again, you must also remember, like President Obama in the United States of America signed so many executive orders, one of which was the Obamacare. And as soon as President Trump came into office, the first thing he did on his first day of office, which he promised even during the campaigns, he canceled that executive order, which was the Obamacare. So executive orders are neither here nor there. They are good intended, you know, but indeed we need a legislation that can properly put these things into perspective. And that's what we at the House of Representatives are trying to achieve.
All right, just quickly tell us the stage. What's the stage of this particular bill you're talking about in terms of reading and, of course, the status of the bill right now before the House of Representatives?
Well, the bill recently passed through second reading, and the next stage after second reading, where it's been recommended to committee, and we're going to have robust engagements with every critical stakeholder in the various sectors. Unfortunately, because of COVID-19, we may not be able to have physical engagements. So we're going to virtually have these engagements through webinars, conferences, Zoom meetings, and the rest. There are some engagements that we will have physically following the COVID-19 protocols, you know, and we're expecting that between now and sometime in August, we would have come to a stage where the bill will be ready for third reading and then will be forwarded to the presidency for assent. I believe that everything is happening for good. I believe that this COVID-19 experience is an opportunity that has presented Nigerians to begin to look inwards and develop a legislation that will ensure that we build every sector in our economy to create jobs for Nigerians and to build capacity of our indigenous companies. We should go further to ensure that we build that capacity of our indigenous companies to grow them into multinationals. The Asians did it with Hyundai, Samsung, and the rest of them. The Chinese have done it with their companies based on this local content legislation. It's high time we do it. COVID-19 has shown us that we need to look inwards, that we cannot continue depending on exporting technology, on exporting manpower, that we need to build our own capacity in country. And that's what we're looking to achieve with this bill.
Now, for Nigerians listening to you, how would you convince them that indeed this bill is being developed for their own interests, considering the fact that people are losing their jobs daily as a result of COVID-19, unemployment rate is set to increase from 23% to about 35%. How do you convince them that this is a bill to look out for and to be part of? Should there be a public, conversation and public hearing on the matter?
Well, I'll tell you a little story. Far back when they were using horses for transportation, and then the automobile industry came into being, everybody was scared that people would lose jobs, that those that were making the shoes for the horses were going to lose jobs. That how do you convince them? But the moment the automobile industry came into being, people got even more jobs. The jobs quadrupled from that industry. So all I'm saying is that, yes, people will lose jobs as a result of COVID-19, but they need to key into technology. And our law presents that platform for them. In our law, we have a lot of omnibus clauses because we know that sectors are specific. We cannot copy and paste in every sector. So as a result of our engagement, we're going to ensure that we have robust engagement with every critical sector. And we're going to be saying to them, come, what can we do to give you a fighting chance in your sector using our local content law as a platform? The opportunities are endless. Nobody is talking of globalization anymore. Globalization is going to be a thing of the past. COVID-19 has shown us that we need to look inwards. We need to develop every sector in our economy. We need to build capacities, and we need to build our own indigenous companies into multinationals, or at least to be self-sufficient. That's what this bill seeks to achieve, and that's what we want Nigerians to understand, that this is an opportunity that has been presented.
You did say that it's not yet Uhuru for the oil and gas sector that already has a legislation on local content. But what is the penalty or sanction against companies who fail to comply with provision of the Local Content Act as it affects other sectors of the economy and contained in the bill?
Well, thank you very much. You know, when you create a bill and you fix penalties and sanctions, it's not your expectation that you're going to have to enforce them. You're fixing those penalties as a deterrent. So first of all, we hope that people will be responsible enough to comply with the provisions of this bill and not deliberately flaunt them. And if that happens, we will not have cause to enforce these sanctions. But we'll put in place sanctions and penalties, ranging from 5 years imprisonment for anybody found wanting, ranging from 20 million naira fine to 60 million naira fine, and also 10 years imprisonment, depending on the clause of this bill that you've infringed on. But we're hoping, like I said, that it will not get to that people will be responsible enough to know that there's a law in place in Nigeria which they must abide with. And we're trying to strengthen institutions. We're not creating agencies with this bill. We're saying that every ministry should create a department of local content in every sector that the bill applies to, so that way we do not create agencies and weaken the main institution, that we can build those institutions and strengthen them like it happens in every other clime. Why would the Ministry of Works not have a department of local content? Why would the Ministry of Aviation not have a department of local content? Why would the Ministry of Telecommunications not have a department of local content? And so on and so forth. We're saying every ministry have your department of local content, and then ensure that you comply with the letters of this bill. In our bill, we're going to have a Nigerian Content Committee, which we're proposing that will be headed by the Vice President. And that committee will also have ministers of these strategic ministries as members, members of NGOs, PTAN, civil society organizations as members of this committee. And the responsibility of this committee is to create policies that will drive the implementation of local content in the various ministries. So we are hoping, or we're hopeful, that when the bill is signed into law, it will build our institutions and that local content will be an integral part of every critical sector in Nigeria.
It's quite interesting that the bill does not elicit developing a new agency, just as we have in the Oil and Gas, Local Content Act, where there's a board really created, to oversee the affair and implementation and enforcement of the provisions of that particular act. Now, having mentioned the oil and gas, local content in the oil and gas sector, there is a bill also on the Nigerian, it's called the Nigerian Oil and Gas Industry Content Development Amendment Bill 2020. Why is that necessary?
Well, like I said, we've recorded a couple of gains in the oil and gas sector with the NOGID Act 2010. And this is 10 years back, where in 2020 today, there is bound to be areas where the bill did not cater for. There's bound to be challenges in the implementation of the 2010 bill. So we've considered all those challenges, and I'll give you a few examples. First, we're saying that the 1% deduction is not enough. We should increase it to 2% so that we create more opportunities for Nigerian companies and for Nigerians to be gainfully employed in the sector. Secondly, we're saying the bill does not cater for the mid and the downstream sector. So now in the amendment, we have captured the mid and some part of the downstream sectors of the oil and gas. And again, we're saying that there are some directorates in the agency that we need to improve to be in line with current trends. So there's a lot we're doing. And again, for research and development, which I think is very critical. Before now, little or nothing was deducted for research and development. The companies operating in Nigeria had it at their liberty to decide what they would do in terms of research and development. But now we put it in the bill that you must spend 0.5% of your gross income on research and development, and half of that amount will be committed to research and development in Nigerian institutions, which include our universities, which include higher institutions of higher education and all that, so that you can do research. It's only in Nigeria that we do not commit funds into research and development. That's why you see this COVID-19 has posed so much of a challenge to us. In other climes, they are looking for cures for COVID-19. We need to be able to commit funds into research and development so that we can begin to achieve that, so that nothing takes us unawares, so that indeed we can be self-sufficient as a nation. That is basically what this bill seeks to achieve.
Now, how do we harness the interest of other stakeholders, talking about other stakeholders within the executives, to be able to align with the true intention of this bill? Should it, scale all the processes and become a law? I'm talking about issue of enforcement of some of the provisions of the act, of the bill, if it eventually scales to become an act.
Well, like I said, we're going to have robust engagement with every sector.
Okay.
The bill is, as it has passed through second reading, is just the general principles of the bill, but we've circulated copies of this bill to every critical sector, and we're going to be engaging with them so that we get their complete buy-in. We're not going to come up with a bill that will stifle progress in any sector of the economy. We are going to come up with a bill that will assist everybody. So it's a win-win for everybody. Even our expatriates is a win-win for them. All we are saying to them is, as you come into Nigeria, you ensure that you follow the letters of this bill, you transfer technology, you do what you need to do, you employ our people and protect yourselves as a company. And again, I must use this opportunity to thank and commend His Excellency, the President of Nigeria, President Muhammad Buhari, for the initiative of signing the Executive Order 003 and 005. That shows that the executive was already in tune with this bill that is about to be passed by the National Assembly. So all we're going to be doing is engaging with every MD, every sector. If there are challenges, if there are areas where you think we need to tweak a little bit, we'll put it to public scrutiny. And at the end of the day, we will bow to what will be in the best interest of Nigeria. That's what this bill achieves.
Thank you so much, Honorable. We've been talking to the chairman of the House Representatives Committee on Nigerian Content Development and Monitoring, Honorable Legor Idagbo. Thank you so much for your perspectives on this issue.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Nigerians, for listening to me. Thank you very much.
All right, and thank you for investing your time with us on today's edition of Kakaki, the African Voice. We'll return tomorrow, that would be Friday, with another edition of the program. In the meantime, have a wonderful day. I am Salamatu Ibrahim.